You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by Tasty Trade. You take the unbeaten path. You root for the away team. You wear shorts in winter. You don't put ketchup on a hot dog. So why wouldn't you trade with a broker that lets you go your own way? Tasty Trade. Stocks, options, futures, and more. You choose. You trade. Chart moves with hundreds of custom indicators. Stare at the candles till you see them in your sleep. See it, click it, trade it on mobile, web, or desktop. Supported by a trade desk that knows how traders think. The data, the tools, the knowledge. Get what you need to make smart moves. Go to tastytrade.com/pod to see for yourself, genius. Tasty Trade Incorporated is a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA, NFA, and SIPC. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
That music means we are back. It is Monday. It is time to commence operations here on the old Options Insider Radio Network. Hope you had a good weekend. Hope you're rested and raring to go. One final full trading week ahead of us before the madness that is Election Day can unfold. What surprises are still in store? I guess we shall find out. That is actually the subject of our question of the week. Get over there. At Options on Twitter right now. We're going to ask you quite simply if all this stuff can still happen, surprises can still unfold. Quite simply, heading into the weekend, where do you think VIX is going to go out this week? What's going to happen this week? What's going to happen to VIX? I gave you four ranges, 18 to 21 right here. Nice wide ranges too, so you can really stick in them a little bit. Below 18, 21 to 24, or still higher, north of 24. If you can't deal with a 3-point range, I don't know what to say to you. Get over there at Options, make your voice heard. Right now, the early voting is certainly intriguing, and the show should be intriguing, so stay tuned for that, listeners. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as some of the aforementioned network. Remember, if you want to go pro, theoptionsinsider.com/pro, the place to go to learn more. Awesome Q&As, awesome oddities, all sorts of goodness and fun on the old pro side. And you know what's also fun is when we kick off our trading week with a little bit of 80s Trivia Challenge. Here we go. All right, we got the theme going here. That's just so I can introduce our players, our contestants today, who are, of course, the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, whose neck of the woods I was in this weekend, as well as from, or I should say by, excuse me, the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. Gentlemen, get your hands on your buzzers, because now we've had some fun with a little bit of the old audio daily doubles. So we're going to go back to that again as I knock over half of the things in the studio. We're going to go back to that again here for one more audio daily double. It is spooky season, listeners, so we thought, in keeping with the spirit of the season, we'd get a little spooky ourselves with this week's audio daily double. This technically, I will give you a hint, this film that we're going to play the soundtrack for technically falls outside of our 80s umbrella here for this segment. It is right before the 80s. I believe it's 79, maybe 78, but late 70s is when this film came out. Nonetheless, a seminal film for this time of year with an even more seminal soundtrack. Can you name this film? Here we go. Oh, Andrew, he's buzzing.
Halloween.
Yes. That is effectively the theme song to Michael Myers, aka The Shape. Still one of the better. Well, first off, the progenitor of the slasher genre, but also one of the better ones out there. I've never been a big slasher movie guy, but I always thought Halloween was creepy. In no small part. I
can tell you everything about that movie, and I freaked out about if it was really still called Halloween. Like isn't Jamie Lee Curtis?
Yeah, that was kind of the origin of Jamie Lee Curtis. This movie, yes. She became the scream queen after this. She was in a lot of horror movies for a while.
Yeah.
In the early part of her career. So yes, I think it's kind of like Jaws. The theme song kind of makes it. If you just see Michael Myers with that, actually it's a Captain Kirk mask, a little bit of trivia. He's wearing a Captain Kirk mask, which is creepy in and of itself. But if you just see him without the music, it's scary, but it's like, okay, but it's like Jaws. You see Jaws coming without the music, it's like, okay. Then all of a sudden, once the Jaws soundtrack kicks in, you're like, oh, I'm kind of creeped out. Same thing with Michael Myers. When he pops up from behind the clothesline and you see, they hear the music, that's, okay.
I wonder if that won best theme score in the Oscars, because I agree with you. Clearly, the movie's totally different with that, because as soon as you hear that, man, you're grabbing your theater seat.
You're freaking out. So yeah, John Carpenter, a good composer. He's unheralded in that sense. He directed the movie and he made the music. So yes, there you go, listeners. Halloween, the Rock Lobster, finally getting a point as we head on into the trading.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading as I write down Andrew actually winning a point, listeners, a rare thing. You must make record of it here. Yeah, Andrew, as he mentions in the chat, 2 points in a row now, slowly. I emphasize slowly clawing his way out of the immense hole that he has dug for himself this season. And Uncle Mike having no small part of that as well, kind of digging that hole for him with some surprise trivia guesses. Is there any surprises in store for us in the market today? We did have the much anticipated Israeli retaliation over the weekend to Iran. Some people thought maybe that would juice up vol, but it seems like hopefully that's it. So vol taking a bit of a respite today. Markets looking a little bit green to kick off the week. NASDAQ up about 0.5%. S&P up about 1/3%, right around 58.30 as we're kicking off the show, listeners. The Dow up about 2/3%. And once again, because why not, let's go out to our old pal, small caps, up 1.7%. Gotta love small caps. They just do their thing, listeners. It's small caps world. We're all just living in it. 1930 roughly was where VIX cash was when we kicked off the show. Down slightly from the Thursday show. Down not even 1/4 of a point, about 0.2 of a point. So I'd pretty much call that close to unched out there in VIX land. We know from experience VIX can be anywhere within a few minutes, let alone by the end of the show. So intriguing stuff out there. VVIX 113 up about 2 points. So still frothy. Kind of getting back to what I was saying at the top of the show with our poll right now. There's obviously still a lot can happen between now and the election. But let's go out. I don't get a chance to say this too often, listeners. Let's go out to the winner of our 80s/late 70s trivia challenge in this case, Mr. Rock Lobster. First, if you have any enduring memories of the kind of original, well, I guess you can maybe call Psycho the original slasher film. But outside of that, really Halloween kicking it off. Any thoughts about the seminal film that is Halloween, sir? And then B, what's catching your eye in these not so spooky markets, at least today?
I would just say the tension in that movie felt new. Like, I remember other, like, I feels like that was like the very tense, scary movie. I guess Psycho was, nobody even knew when that thing came out, right? But I think this added like another layer of sort of tension. I think it was a well done, scary movie. But it's been a while since I've seen it. And also the ubiquitous mask.
Yes.
Like you put one of those, what is it? That was like an old school hockey goalie mask?
No, that's Jason is the goalie mask. Michael Myers is actually a Captain Kirk mask.
Oh, was it a Captain Kirk mask?
If you look at it, you can kind of see it.
But it's anyway, it was anyway, I just remember that. It's good. I probably haven't seen the movie though in like 40 years or something. But anyway, I age myself as usual. Market. Oh, we had that crazy bid for vol on Friday. And then by the end of the day, today it subsided. So, the Middle East thing, whatever, it's hope there, you just kind of pray for some peace there. It could happen. Europe fought wars for what? 1,000 years, basically, over the same territory for 1,000 years. And Europe is somewhat peaceful now. So it is possible. I'm just reading this history of Winston Churchill's history of English-speaking people. So if anybody wants an actual well-written history of basically England from the Romans to World War I, it is a good it is a great read, but also, anything happening now, and especially with the founding of this country, understanding the history around it, and Churchill was exhaustive researcher as well. So very well read. It's like 5 volumes. But nothing is, not a lot has changed under the political. Everything we have right now, there's nothing we've got going on right now that hasn't happened in the past in some way, shape, or form. So everybody can take that with a grain of salt. And again, going into the election, the country has survived other things. We have had elections during an actual civil war. And in Lincoln, although he was a great president, he could play fast and loose with the Constitution when he needed to. We have not really seen anything like that since World War II. At least I can believe what I read historically from a president. So, I think a little historical perspective is always good. The market is still pricing, I believe at this point, not so much as a surprise. Kamala is the establishment candidate, from the current administration. Trump, coming back in off the bench. I think the market is more pricing some kind of odd surprise about, how the election might play out or something weird like that. Although I'm starting to see states doing better at counting and whatnot. So they're expecting, likely a voting result by Wednesday, which is still the fact we don't have it within 24 hours or by the next morning, is, again, I think our election system needs a little help. But I think that's where VIX is. We still have a 10 realized vol on SPX. Volatility risk premium is out of sight. But corporate earnings are okay. Corporate earnings, the companies made money in the 70s when we had inflation. They're making money now. They just have to know that there's inflation, and having some kind of course, some sort of understanding where rates are going from the Fed. So what I would say, though, is next week, 2 days after the election, the Fed is going to, I guess, lower rates again. There's a 90% probability of a 25-point basis cut. I see zero reason why we should have one. None at all. We're not at target inflation. The government is still spending they spent $500 billion in 3 months added to the debt. So I don't know. And 4 years ago, they spent 50% less money. So I don't know what they're doing. I understand interest payments are a lot higher, but companies, again, USA, companies, stocks go up. Ultimately, and again, understanding how the country was started as a business venture way back when to escape insane European wars that lasted some of them lasted 100 years, for crying out loud. So, and we are lucky to be here. And we're lucky to have the system we have. And for at least right now, stocks appear to be doing okay. And we have massive big tech earnings this week. So it'll be interesting to see. I think my closet one is Amazon to do well. But we'll see how good that plays out. But for right now, VIX ain't going down till the election is over. That's the deal.
Look at you. We're lucky to have the system we have. A rare note of optimism from the noted cynic, Mr. Rock.
Optimistic today.
Wow.
It must be the win. It must be the win.
It must be the broken furnace that's just keeping you chilly, and so you got to be on your toes the whole time. I don't know what it is, but you're drinking the optimistic Kool-Aid, a little bit of the Uncle Mike Kool-Aid. Now, I could be the curmudgeon and say this great system has given us two awesome candidates. Whoever wins, we lose, like Alien versus Predator. But I won't be that guy. I won't rain on your optimistic parade. Instead, I will turn it over to the other optimist, Mr. Uncle Mike. Uncle Mike, I was in your neck of the woods this weekend, maybe even steps from your doorstep. You know, I did all the things you do out there in the hinterlands of St. Charles. I went to the fairgrounds. I tipped over a few cows and I ate at Skippy's. That's pretty much what you do, right?
I mean, we do have other restaurants here besides Skippy's.
No, I don't think I think there's only one in all of. By the way, did they change their name? I just see Skippy's on this. It doesn't say Gyros and Lemonade anymore.
Not that I know of.
Are they trying to get hip? No more Gyros and Lemonade on the sign?
Hey, we do it all here in St. Charles. We are not just limited to Euros.
Guess what I had at Skippy's?
I'll guess €1 and 11.
Yes, exactly. I'm living up. That's the order you got to get. It used to be on the sign, so I'm not going to deviate. I don't want to get thrown in jail in St. Charles.
That's the last thing you need is to get thrown in jail in St. Charles.
Yeah, they're still mad at me for that Ricketts comments from like 7 years ago.
Pretty much. I mean, that pretty much killed all the audiences that we have at restaurants throughout the city and that listen to the option block.
I did notice you did have one other restaurant in your little downtown area, and it was the best combination of foods I've ever seen. It was a sushi and burger bar.
Sushi and burger bar. Did you go moto?
I don't know. It just said sushi and burger bar on the front. It's like, who puts those two foods together? Only in St. Charles do they eat sushi and burgers together.
Well, listening to the option block, that's how we roll, baby.
Land of just all good things, St. Charles, sir.
No doubt. And happy to report we beat Geneva this last weekend. So we got a share of the Duquesne Conference title onto the playoffs or taking on Rolling Meadows first round. Ooh. So that's the other excitement around town here in St. Charles.
Hot times indeed, sir.
No doubt. But in terms of these markets, I think we're just going to be we're kind of up on the day. I mean, yeah, we're up 0.4%, so I'm not trying to poo-poo that by any means, but we're not going to, I really don't see us getting any major moves over the course of the next, 8 days, or I guess 5 trading days or whatever it is till the election. And I think the markets are kind of in wait and see mode for the time being. We're getting sellers again in the bond market. And so with whatever the Fed's supposed to do, with the probability of them lowering rates, you just don't know. And the fact that we're getting the bond sell-off with which we have, it really makes me wonder of where rates are going to be going after the election. And so I think that the main thing that I'm watching right now, of course, I always watch the S&P, but I think it's also very important right now to keep an eye on bonds. And where we are there. In terms of some of the yields that exist in the bond market, we are becoming closer to to exverting. I don't know, what's the opposite of an inverted yield curve? An exverted yield curve? So anyway, whatever the case may be, 10-year note, 4.25 as of last Friday. And so in looking at it, we do have the 20-year higher than that, and the 30-year is still slightly lower than the 20-year. So it's not quite a fully non-inverted yield curve, but the fact that you can still get 4.7 in the 3-month yield, that says something. So with looking at this, I think it's going to be interesting to see as yields, quote unquote, normalize, as we're doing what we're doing, and how the Fed's going to affect this. I think it's something also that we need to keep a pretty close eye on. So that's the main thing that I'm watching. Just some other things that are lighting up the tape. Silver has a little bit of a rally today, up 22 cents on the day. Looking at SLV, up 0.7%. Nothing major, but it is still higher. And just some individual names. Taiwan Semiconductor is actually having a down day. They haven't had a lot of those in recent months, but they're actually down $7 to the 196 mark, down 3.5%. And then a couple of other things that are lighting up the tape, kind of, sort of, even though the market's not having a major day, if you will. We do have the fruit company Apple up at the 234 level. So that's up about 1.3% on the day. And then we do have JP Morgan. The banks continuing to be resilient, up just under 1% on the day. So for the most part, it looks to me and feels to me like the market's trying to figure out what it's going to do after the election, and traders and investors are placing their money in positioning for where they feel the election is going to go. That's my feel on everything for now.
I've got to ask you really quickly, any thoughts on the seminal film Halloween, sir?
Nah, I'm not really into creepy movies. I mean, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, are not really my thing. Never really got into those.
Not a Freddy versus Jason guy, not your thing. I get it. You're too busy hanging out in the paradise on earth. That is St. Charles. Why would you sully your mind with such negativity, sir? Let's see if there's any negativity out there in the markets today, shall we? Maybe there's some positivity. I mean, after all, the markets are up. Maybe there's some volume to follow, and the answer is unfortunately no, listeners. VIX hanging out right around 250,000 contracts, so it doesn't seem like we're going to have a banger day on our hands, at least today. The ADV is still hanging out right around 750,000 contracts, so we're pretty much a third of the way there. The big dog out there today looks like it's the DEES 14 half puts going up 44,000 times today, all in one print. Like the 13 half puts also went up, also at the same time, not marked spread, but looks like. Oh, and then we have the 13 puts. So we have 44,000 of the 14 half puts, looks like, against 22,000 of the 13 half puts and 22,000 of the 13 puts. So they did the 14 half puts for 47 cents and the other two for 21 and 12 cents respectively. So I don't know, you like that, listener? It's kind of a bit of a broken spread there. Yeah, I don't know. It's intriguing. Splitting your uprights there a little bit on the put side. Either way, that's it for today. 254,000 contracts on the tape. A SPY looking kind of light today as well. 4.12 million on the tape. The ADV 7.29 now. So seems like we might be on pace to hit that. We'll see. The S also looking pretty sluggish. 1.41 million contracts right now. The ADV a little over 3, about 3.06. So the S also looking kind of light out there today. Small caps, though, they heard the starter's gun. Small caps, 893,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV, 1.16 million. They might hit that by the end of the show. Small caps on fire out there today. Let's see, what is the big dog out there? Because we know it's typically not a 0-day trade in small caps. It is the November expiring on the 15th. So these are the monthly. 208 puts going up 84,000 times. Looks like against 80 of the 211 puts. Looks like it might be a roll opening on the 211 puts, maybe closing on the 208 puts. So rolling up those puts a little bit. Could certainly see an argument for that when small caps are popping 1.7% today. 160,000 contracts right there. So now you can see why small caps are so hot right out of the gate. And the Qs pretty much right around where we expect them to be now, 2.33 million. The ADV 3.84 million out there. All right, to single names we go, listeners. Are there any secrets, any treasures to be found out here in single names? Is it a banger day? It's a decent day, I'll say. 249,000, a tick under $250,000. That's what it cost us to break into the top 10 today. That gets us to our old pal AMD. AMD all the way down the bottom of the list today. A weird day, a little bit of a shakeup in the top 10 today, including at the top of our top 10. Spoiler, but we'll get there in a second. AMD, number 10, 159 and about a half, up about 3.25, a little over 2, about 2.1%. So nice little day on the AMD side. Good for 249,000 contracts and the number 10 overall spot, listeners. Number 9, it's GameStop. Haven't seen this one pop up in our list in a little bit. 21.93, up about $1.33, about 6.5%. So I don't know what nonsense is going on out here. More buyers and sellers. You don't really have to look too hard to find what's going on in GameStop usually. Number 9, 255,000 contracts at the end of the day. Number 8, our old pal, Alphabet Class A, 266 on the tape, 166.80, up about $1.50 or nearly 1% for good old Google. Number 7, back to China, Chinese cars, it's NIO, 588, up 62 cents or nearly 12% today. So nice little pop for NIO today. Looks like analysts upgrading them. That's what's driving our upside today. Chinese cars apparently hot again. Number 7, 284 for NIO. Speaking of cars, number 6, let's go domestic now to Ford. Typically a dumpster fire. Typically just a ball of crap wrapped in a sock and thrown in the ocean. That is Ford. Today looking a little better. 11.32, up about a quarter today or 2.17%. Now, they do have earnings coming up. And if past is prologue, earnings will come along and just cut their legs out from under them like they did last. I think they were like around $14.50, close to it, on their last announcement. And they just cut all that off down to about $11, 10 change almost overnight. So let's see if Ford can repeat that fun. Either way, number 6, 311,000 contracts for Ford. Let's see if they could lose, I don't know, less than $100,000 per EV that they sell. Not exactly a long-term viable business plan. Let me tell you how I really think about Ford, listeners. Number 5, it's the fruit company. 349,000 contracts, 234.5, up about $3 or 1.3% today. So decent day for them out there. Kind of quiet on the options front. Number 4, SOFI. SOFI's been a banger of late, and their underlying is delivering as well. They are number 4, 362,000 contracts. So they've been in our top 10 a lot over the last couple of weeks. 11.30 is where they're trading on, up 30 cents or about nearly 3% for them today. So a nice little pop for them again today. SOFI breaking their way into the top 5, even into the top 4 on our most actives today. Number 3, I guess it is inevitable that, my goodness, this name is on the fire today. Wow. We were joking about that straddle being too rich, $17 this last week on our question of the week. This is DJT, number 3, 387,000 contracts, up $7.75, only 20%. 46.70 right now. My goodness. Just after that crazy rally, they're saying that was all. Again, the stock doesn't move on fundamentals. We all know that. So maybe one crazy rally is enough to do that. I don't know. But either way, man, 20% makes that $17 straddle seem, dare I say it, cheap. Nothing's cheap about NVIDIA, number 2, 1.34 million. Notice I said number 2 again. NVIDIA kicked to the curb again today. 141.19, off about 35 cents or about 0.25%. Not really a banger day for them on the underlying front or on the volume front, which is why they're relegated to number 2. Only 1.34 million. What could possibly usurp them 2 sessions in a row now? Well, it's the old Tesla. I believe they are a Belgian firm. 1.47 million. 269.70, up about 50 cents right now. They've had a range, though, today. 266 on the downside, 273.5. 7.5 point range on the day here for good old Tesla. Either way, 2 sessions in a row, topping NVIDIA. That is interesting. On the heels of that blowout number, or you could say blowout, credit capture last time. Either way, people liked it. Market liked it. And they're liking some volume out there today. 1.47 million for Tesla. And the number one spot, listeners. Let's keep rolling out to the earnings scene because it is a hot, just jam-packed. I'm looking at this calendar. My goodness, there's no room for any more names to sneak in here. Of course, I mentioned Ford after the bell today. Everyone's favorite Rambus. Haven't heard that name in forever on the old memory side. Man, that's an old school name. Popping off out there today. Tomorrow, we got SOFI. We've got Mickey D's. We've got Pfizer, JetBlue, CROX, AMD, good old Alphabet, Snap. Remember them? Chipotle, and EA Sports. Wednesday, we've got Lilly, Caterpillar, good old Softy, the artist formerly known as Facebook, Coinbase, and Robinhood on the same day, back-to-back. Uncle Mike's two favorites. We got Roku and Carvana and good old S-Bucks. Thursday, Uber, Peloton. Can they ever get out of their own way? I guess we'll find out. Amazon and Apple and some company called Intel. Friday, we've got Chevron and Exxon. So, man, we've got just some bangers out there. Luckily for you, because we like you. Hot off the presses, earnings move, reports. Let's go out to Ford. Dumpster fire that it is. It was 11:07 when we ran this report this morning. They were pricing in 85 cents. In the past, they've moved 70 cents. So, pricing a little bit more juice. Of course, after a lot of that's probably biased by the last cycle. They just fell apart after their announcement. So, is it merited to have nearly $1 worth of juice in Ford? I guess we shall find out after the bell today. Listen, are you trading Ford? Are you selling premium? Are you buying premium out there? Hit us up. Let us know. Well, let's go out to rubber shoes because why not? 29th before the bell. 133 3/4. 1182 is what they were pricing in the past. They moved 1255. So taking some rubber shoe vol off the top. Still pretty juicy. Still pretty rich on that straddle front. But taking about 70 cents off the top there. Mickey D's 29th before the bell. 292.61 is where they were trading. They're pricing in, I should say. Get this, 1035. In the past, they moved 594. So, wow. That is a heck of a lot of juice in Mickey D's. Little Whopper vol. Or that would be Burger King, wouldn't it? Little Big Mac vol. I guess I'm not about my fast food listeners. SoFi, 29th before the bell. 10.99 is where they were trading. They were pricing in $1.35. In the past, they moved $1.21. So pretty close to what they've delivered in the past is what they're pricing in. So maybe not looking for any crazy, outlandish surprises out there. Let's go out to Alphabet, 29th after the bell. 165.25 is where they were when we ran these numbers. They were pricing in $9.80. In the past, they moved $10.18. So almost 40 cents, about 38 cents off the top, but pretty close to in line with their previous numbers. Snap, what are they? Are they a camera company? Are they a social media company? They're making drones, they're making all kinds of stuff. Goggles. 10.45 where they were trading. They're pricing in $1.94. In the past, they moved $2.52. So taking a fair amount of juice, nearly 60 cents off the top. We'll do a couple more listeners, then we'll get out of here for the old odd block. Let's go to the twofer on the 30th here of Coinbase and Robinhood. First, Coinbase, 30th after the bell. 205, pretty much even is where they were trading. They were pricing in $16.70. In the past, they moved $15.18. Not bad. So nearly $1.50 worth of extra juice, $1.52 to be precise. Is that merited, listeners? You know, given the way Coinbase has been moving and how much it moves, pretty much predicated on crypto, it's hard to argue that is too cheap. It's crazy. Almost the same price as Carvana now. How crazy is that? We were just joking about that name a couple of years ago. Now it's about the same price as Coinbase, 202.5. By the way, Carvana, just for fun, 30th after the bell. 26.5 is what they were pricing in. In the past, they've moved 47.25. I want to dig into that data a little bit because obviously there's some crazy outsized moves in that. And that's a rolling 3-year period. So there obviously was a couple crazy outsized moves in those 3 years. 12 quarters to be precise, but still. Wow. Hood. Let's go to Hood, 30th after the bell. $27 even. They're pricing in $2.50. In the past, they've moved $2.12. So not bad. 38 cents worth of extra juice on top as well. Interesting. Is that merited, listeners? Are you out there slinging a little Robinhood? Hit us up. Let us know. Meanwhile, it's time for us to let you know what's going on in the world of wild options activity. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
right, listeners, let's get weird. Let's get wild. Let's unleash the Eye of Sauron, see what it fixes its gaze upon today, listeners. First, let's go out to the hallowed halls of Altus Power Inc. Ticker symbol AMPS. I like it. I see what you did there. AMPS. I'm always here for an appropriate ticker. This is a solar power name out of Stamford, Connecticut. Intriguing. Don't see a lot of solar names coming out of good old CT. 370. Up about 28 cents or a little over 8% today. So good day for them. On the year, not so much. They're trying to claw their way back. They were 5.13 a year ago, so they're off about $1.43 or nearly 28% on the year. They got as high as about 7.25 back in February of this year. So from their high in February, they've really just crushed. It looks like a lot of that sale came in March. It went from about $7 down to $4.50 just in a couple of weeks in March, and then they've kind of been drifting lower ever since. I will say, though, they got down to 271 back a couple of weeks ago in October. Since then, they've rallied about $1. So they have managed to stem some of the bleeding over the last just couple of weeks out here. But net, though, it has still been a rough year. Let's see what our Eye of Sauron fixed its fiery gaze upon today, Mr. Rock Lobster. Let's go out to February. Looks like somebody maybe feeling their oats out there again. They said Feb 25s. Feb 25s. That'd be interesting. Feb 4s expiring in 2025, of course. How are they? They got 30 cents at 50. Now, you might say that's a pretty freaking wide market, but it is amps. It's going out to February. I understand that. I get it. And they said, we will pay 47 cents 3,000 times for the privilege of buying your beloved upside here in amps. That's a 70 vol. If you are wondering, listeners, the stock was a little bit lower, 360. So they got a nice dime working in their favor in the stock, but they're going to need more than that if they're going to have these fours pay off. But they are buying some duration, including at least one earnings announcement. That first announcement is coming up, it's like in a couple of weeks on the 11th. So we'll know in a couple of weeks, hopefully, who our president is, A, and B, what's going on with AMP's second, very close second. What's going on with AMP's earnings, I should say. Mr. Rock Lobster, are you a fan of these Feb 4s in your beloved Altus Power Inc., sir?
In my beloved, well, I like the stock ticker's good.
Yes,
AMPS.
It is.
You know, what can you say about I think there's a lot of solar powered hangovers going on. They were looking for, the big green push. I don't know how much money we spent on it. But right now, I think a lot of those solar stocks are out of favor. Although this one, it looks like it makes some money doing it. Solar panels on the roof, power. There's definitely a business for solar, especially with the endless. It's just how big, and I think a lot of people have got burnt on them with the prices of some of these stocks. Let's see, was this $100 stock over the last 5 years? Actually, no, it wasn't. So it is probably it peaked at around $12. So yeah, I don't think this is a bad play. I think there definitely is a place for solar energy, no question. So, I mean, most of the solar stocks, maybe except for First Solar, which is still kind of the darling stock in that sector, at least as I recall. It's been around for a long time. I think these have a decent shot, to be honest. I'm going to put that on my year low list, though, right now, because that's what I do. I don't buy it, but I like to put out alerts and stuff to see if these things go back and see if there's any actual flow like this, right? So there is some flow. So somebody's, again, I don't think this is an unreasonable purchase at all. And I think our day one sniff test, they were 30-50. Now they're 50 bids. So somebody else likes them.
Printing money on these amps, Feb 4s. Just can't get enough of the upside out here. Yeah, the 50-cent bid coming out. That's not the worst thing when you buy some calls. Let's see. It could also be that just not a very liquid name, too. A little bit of column A, maybe a little bit of column B. But still, yeah, not the worst thing when you're buying them. And you're bid out, listeners. As we keep rolling, let's go out to Let's go to On Semiconductor Corp for our next name. Ticker symbol, appropriately enough, ON, O-N. Trading 73.97 right now, up about 272 or 3.8% today. So nice little pop for them today. The headline here is stock falls. I don't know, maybe in the open it did, but they've rallied since. So they had an earnings beat. Yeah, it looks like now the stock rebounds after earnings. So apparently it was a mixed bag on earnings, but the stock is rallying now. On the year, this is, by the way, an American semiconductor out of Scottsdale, Arizona. You know, like I was joking about Stamford, Connecticut being the mecca of solar. Scottsdale, Arizona, of course, being the mecca for chip manufacture in the globe, listeners. We obviously have spent a lot in this country to try to change that narrative of late. On, obviously, a beneficiary of that. 73.89, up $8.50, or about nearly 13% on the year. A year ago, they were $65. They rallied all the way up in December to 86.77, and that was pretty much all she wrote for the year. They crushed it down to the low for the year, 59 1/3 back in April. Then they rallied it back up in July to 78 3/4, so about $5 north of where it is right now. Then it's kind of bounced around ever since, down to $67, back up to $78 again, then right back down to $67, and back up to 75, then right back down to 67. So 67 appears to be a decent little floor out here, then right back up to 73, almost 74, where it is right now. So does this next leg up have legs, listeners? I guess we'll find out. It's like somebody thinks it does, but they're not going out too far either. Maybe they've seen this chart. They know that these upside moves are kind of short-lived, but they're not messing around to the upside, though. They came in and said, Nov 78's expiring on the 1st. So that's this Friday. Hard to believe, November, already coming up. Halloween in the offing here, listeners. They said, Nov 78's expiring this week. How are they? They got 23 cents at 24. A weirdly tight market for this. They got about, and they said, we'll buy 1,793 for 24 cents. Probably so tight because it was right after earnings on this name. The stock was 72.47, so they've had a nice little run on these since then. Obviously, the stock still needs to run. It's got to the end of the week, Mr. Rock Lobster, to cross the 78 finish line, or no bueno. The stock's moved about $1.30 since they bought these calls. They still got a long way to go, sir. What do you think? These 78s expiring this Friday for about a quarter, sir.
Well, it is a semiconductor stock.
That's true. It's not like a utility or something, yeah.
ON Semiconductor Corp. I was just trying to say here, wholly owned, on semi brand, power segment. Like it's a little bit of sensor devices. It's kind of like a little of everything here. Definitely some kind of techie thing. I personally would not buy them, but if you knew what the earnings are going to be, I could see why you might think about them. I can see why you might think about them. It feels like a kind of a long way to go for this particular. Let me see here. That was $110 stock. It does look like it's breaking out a little bit. It looked like the earnings were this morning. So if they're buying them now, I think the stock was 66 on the low, trading 73. I don't know. I think you're going to need a bit of a miracle, maybe a little bit of a miracle to get these to pay.
Yeah, this
point,
this is a bridge too far, then a bridge past that. I think you got a long way to go.
It's the next bridge over.
Yeah,
it's the next bridge.
You got a long way to go on these by Friday. I mean, anything could happen. You know, when the stocks move like $1.25 in your favor, and you still have a long way to go, that maybe you went a bit too far. Speaking of going too far, let's get out of here on these. Let's go back from the October 7th show to everyone's favorite name, especially back then. This name was just lighting it up. This was, of course, everyone's favorite Up FinTech Holding, a.k.a. TIGR, one of those hot Chinese ADRs that was lighting the world on fire not too long ago and was lighting up our unusual activity tape. We talked about a whole bunch of prints out there going out to April and November, but we had one nearer dated trade that seemed like just kind of the definition of maybe several bridges too far. Somebody came in on October 7th, listeners, with the stock was 1273, so much higher than it is right now, by the way. That's your first clue. It's 662, so over $6 below, pretty much cut in half from where it was before. Earnings haven't even happened yet. They're not for another month, November 25th. And someone said, hey, you know what? I'm going to buy myself some OC 25s. Yes, 25s. The stock had to pretty much double from where it was. And they paid 35 cents for that privilege. That was about almost a 300 vol, 284 vol. Even in the annals of our crazy meme stock call days, you don't see a lot of nearly 300 vol outlays. That was pretty rich. We said that at the time. These really have no shot in hell of working. 2,095 of these traded. And Mr. Rock Lobster, take a flying guess where the stock closed on expiration, sir.
Not above 25.
Yes, I'll give you a hint. It wasn't anywhere near 25. $7.22. So they lost $5.50 in the stock between when they bought these calls and when they went out. So these never had a shot. They sucked from the get-go, and they dropped $73,000 on this trade, listeners. Let's just wipe that from our memory. Let's give a ray of sunshine as we head on out to Uncle Mike and the strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, everybody. Luckily for us, Uncle Mike has a whole strategy block about how not to buy the October 25s in TIGR. Have at it, sir. The floor is yours.
Don't do it. There we go. There you go. So today, with the elections looming, with tax harvesting season coming up, I want to talk to you about something that we talk about somewhat frequently on the show, but just want to give a little reminder of in terms of where things are, what you can do, and that is the wonderful benefits of the 1256 contract. Now, what on earth is a 1256 contract? Well, if you want to buy a call or a put on, let's say, Google, Apple, Amazon, whatever, and let's say that you have a $100 profit after a week, well, that's going to be taxed, of course, unless it's in an IRA. It's going to be taxed at the short-term capital gains rate. And the short-term capital gains rate is typically what your ordinary income is, or with the same rate as what your ordinary income is. And also, short-term is typically longer or more expensive than long-term. Whereas, let's say you buy a stock and you hold it for over a year, and then you sell it for a profit, well, you'll be taxed at the long-term capital gains rate, which a lot of times is less than what short-term capital gains would be. So if you're trading options, one thing to think about are these potential benefits within 1256. Now, 1256 is the tax code for these options. Now, the most popular 1256 option in the index world would be that of the SPX, the CBOE's contract. Just ticker symbol SPX. Also, there's XSP, and there's a large variety of other 1256 contracts. Typically, it's index options as well as futures options and futures themselves. Now, the way with which a 1256 contract is taxed is that 60% of the gains, so let's say you have a $100 profit after a week, using the same scenario that we talked about on Google. Let's say you did it with the SPX. You had a $100 profit after a week. $60 is going to be taxed at the long-term capital gain rate, and only $40 is going to be taxed at the short-term rate. You get a 60-40 tax benefit when trading a 1256 contract, and that can be a major big deal on your tax bill. But there's other benefits to them as well. For example, there's no wash sale rules with 1256 contracts, so you can continue to trade them. You don't have to worry about things like that. And there's many other benefits to them as well. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to them. One of the disadvantages, for example, is that you have to market your option at the end of the year, meaning even if you don't sell it on December 31st, the IRS treats it as if you did, and you have to trade it at whatever the closing price is on December 31st. This is a tool that you really need to know about as a trader if you don't already. And if you'd like a refresher course, or this sounds interesting to you and maybe you've never heard it before, tune into my webinar immediately after this show. at 1 p.m. Central Time on Monday, October 28th. Go to adaptivewebinars.com for more information. And that's my strategy block.
All right, listeners, now it's time for us to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, listeners, I mentioned at the top of our show our question of the week this week. One more full trading week before the big day. Anything can still happen. Surprises can still unfold, which raises the question, where do you think VIX will close this Friday heading into the weekend? Will vol come in? Will vol be frothy? Let us know. He gave you 4 choices, 18 to 21, so the range has kind of been bandying about in for a little while now. Or lower, below 18, or higher, 21 to 24, or even higher than that, north of 24. Mr. Rock Lobster, what is your vote? A, this is for Friday, so closing at the end of the day on Friday. B, where do you think our audience is going? And C, what are you keeping an eye on for the rest of the week, sir?
I think we closed this. I think we're going to close right around 20. Just like weekend effect style, pumping the vol up, probably around 20. For this week, I'm looking at big tech earnings and see if they can keep the good times rolling.
All right, Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you. Where does your vote? Where do you think our audience is voting? And what are you keeping an eye on until the Thursday episodes?
I think it's going to be 20 and 20. I think that unless we get some type of major surprise, I think it's going to just kind of stay where it is right now. If we do get a surprise, I think the surprise is going to be after the election, but I'm hoping for no surprise. That's kind of where I'm at on it. And in terms of what I'm watching, definitely watching bonds. I think that's going to be the closest thing that is watching and considering what the Fed is actually going to do. And, of course, also watching to see if we can go into this election at new all-time highs. And if we're going to do it, I'm going to be watching the Options Insider election show on Tuesday night.
Yes, we will be having. Everyone's been asking if we are going to go live. We are going to go live on Tuesday night. Still working out the details in terms of start time and how long my voice will go for. But we will be going live. We will have a whole bunch of special guests joining us on Tuesday, listeners. So hopefully you'll be there to join us too. You can always listen on demand as well, but they're always fun. All sorts of surprises. I'll never forget when I was doing the live show back in 2016 and Mr. Dr. Vix was on and he said, all of a sudden, I think Trump just won Ohio. It wasn't really until that moment that it really sunk in for a lot of people, including us there on the show, that he was still a viable contender. Even all the Hillary things, everything still seemed like she was in the lead. So yeah, it was just an interesting change of pace. Speaking of changes of pace, right now looks like our audience is thinking that vol is mostly going to stay here. Actually, we have a tie. We have 30% say 18 to 21 right now, and then another 30% saying below 18. You think vol is going to get annihilated this week, down below 18? Interesting. We haven't been down that way in a little bit. Be certainly interesting if they did it in the weekend heading into the election. Well, you might argue maybe that's a little bit of a vol buying opportunity then. We shall see. Might get some action before the election. Maybe not. Maybe it's time to crush vol. 20% say 21 to 24, so a little bit higher. And then also 20% saying north of 24. Again, this just went live right around the start of the show. Get over there at Options to make your voice heard, listeners. And let's see really quickly. We also asked you last week about the election, all election-based stuff. You had to buy one straddle to hold through the election. The SPY 582 straddle expiring on the 8th for $17 took it with 37%, followed by number 2, 29.6% of you saying the Nove 31 straddle in DJT going for $17.80. I got to tell you, it's worth more than that now. That's crazy. VIX Nove 19 straddle 416 got 22.2%, and then other got 11% with people writing in for some, shall we say, interesting things. Some of them not to be read on the air, but interesting stuff. Nonetheless, that music means that is going to do it for us on the old OB today. But never fear, listeners. I shall be back in a little bit, so if you're hanging out on the old pro listeners, then just join me in a little bit for a little bit of Uncle Mike's favorite show on the network. Yes, it is time, listeners, for the Crypto Rundown itself. I will be joined by the folks from Tidal Financial Group. Should be interesting to pick their brains on all things crypto. Then, of course, back again to rest of the week for all of our usual fun. But before we get there, let's go out now to the Uncles and Mikes. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, if folks want to join your webinar, where should they go? What should they do?
Go to adaptivewebinars.com. I'll be starting in 1 minute. And also, if you'd like a financial advisor who's not afraid of the option product, check out my website, stcharleswealth.com. Set up an appointment with me. Would love to have a conversation with any and all of our listeners.
No rest.
Love it when people talk back.
No rest for the wicked for Uncle Mike. Right off the show, no beverage break, no bathroom break, right hot into a webinar. Check them out, listeners. stcharleswealth.com, the place to go. And Mr. Rock Lobster, if folks want some Rock Lobster goodness, where should they go, sir?
Yeah, I gotta rock to weekly profit cycles at 2:00. So I'm in the same boat. Fulfillment. 888-TRADE-01 for all our goodies. My Flash 10 closed my first really nice trade. So hopefully we have a new investing product out there. So it's doing good so far. Anyway, 888-TRADE-01, 10% off. You heard the show, and I gotta go.
He's got to go fulfill. And I have to go on to my next show, so we'll be back in a little bit, listeners. Crypto Rundown. Stay tuned. If you're listening on demand, of course, just hit next. Back again tomorrow, of course, Mr. Vias, the noted author extraordinaire, joining us in the hot seat tomorrow. Wednesday, of course, the newest addition to the network, the Futures Rundown, as well as Options Bootcamp. Then we're back again on Thursday, a.k.a. Halloween. Another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by Tasty Trade. You take the unbeaten path. You root for the away team. You wear shorts in winter. You don't put ketchup on a hot dog. So why wouldn't you trade with a broker that lets you go your own way? Tasty Trade. Stocks, options, futures, and more. You choose. You trade. Chart moves with hundreds of custom indicators. Stare at the candles till you see them in your sleep. See it, click it, trade it on mobile, web, or desktop. Supported by a trade desk that knows how traders think. The data, the tools, the knowledge. Get what you need to make smart moves. Go to tastytrade.com/pod to see for yourself, genius. Tasty Trade Incorporated is a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA, NFA, and SIPC. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.